There was a letter and something wrapped in cloth, something with a faint scent. Elegant as always, I see. She undid the wrapping to reveal a ceramic vessel with incense inside. She brought it to her nose and sniffed. It had a sandalwood base with some additions. The mix-ins were probably all very fancy, but the smells did not complement each other very well. She could not escape the impression that the result felt cheap. Jinchi did not perform as well as usual, which was strange because he always had the best of everything. Or did he? Had he purposely sent something not quite as good because it was for Maomao? She remembered him saying once that you could tell a person's class by the incense they used. From that point of view, this was a little nicer than one might expect for a court lady, but not overly so. That still left the question of why Jinchi was sending her incense at all. She sniffed her sleeve and discovered a faint odor of blood. I thought I had gotten the smell out before I saw him. Lately, she had been covering her dissection trips to the farm by claiming she was going out on house calls. The animals were easy enough to explain. Their organs were medicinal and the meat was for food. Today a hunter had good fortune and caught a bear. The doctors were able to be involved in the dissection. Dr. Liu had been ecstatic. He told them this was a very rare opportunity. The blood had to be drained quickly, lest it taint the meat. Because of this, doctors rarely got to observe. They changed into their dissection outfits and put on leather aprons. Once everything was over, Maomao had taken a bath before going back to court. It was nice to get out to one of the public baths every once in a while, she thought. There was no bath at the dorm, so this was a particularly pleasant opportunity. Taking baths every day was one of the few luxuries Maomao had experienced growing up in the pleasure district. She had been able to wash up once every few days, even in the rear palace. Did she like baths? If asked directly, she would say that she did. This time they even paid for her to go to the public bathhouse. Taking a bath in the middle of the day was a pleasure all its own. Oh. Perhaps it is my hair. There had not been time for her hair to dry, so she had gone without washing it. She wondered if Jinchi understood what was necessary to become a real doctor. Some of it maybe, but she was not sure he knew about human corpse dissection. Evidently, he had picked up on the odor she brought with her when she came to examine him. He could be fussy about the strangest things. Maomao was still pondering the situation. She took a teaspoon of the incense and lit it. Then she put a basket over the incense. On top of the basket, she set the clothes she would wear tomorrow. Let us start with this. She used only a pinch of the stuff. She wasn't even sure if it would be noticeable. Thus prepared for the following day, she decided it was time to go to bed. She was about to change into her nightclothes when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she said. NN entered with some spring rolls in her hand. "This is left over from dinner. Do you want it?" "Absolutely." Maomao would never pass up a chance for some of NN's cooking. She wasn't that hungry right now, but it could be tomorrow's breakfast. With all her outings these days, going to see Jinchi and doing medical practice, she hadn't had many opportunities to enjoy NN's home-cooked meals. NN put the plate of spring rolls on the table. Then she spied the incense. "Now that is not like you to perfume your clothes. I have my moons. It just so happens there has been more blood than usual lately." It wasn't untrue. This was precisely the time of the month when she became rather melancholy for a few days. "I know Yao does it and I thought it might be a good idea." She knew, of course, that NN was probably the one actually doing the work. "Oh, I see." Maomao had expected a pointed comeback from NN, but she said nothing more than that. She had surely noticed how often Maomao was out these days, so she is not going to try to sound me out about anything. As long as Maomao wasn't dragging Yao into anything, NN seemed content not to stick her nose into her business. Maomao placed a cloth over the spring rolls and went back to changing. When Maomao arrived at the medical office the next day, she found Yao talking to Dr. Liu, and he did not look very happy. The two young women often missed each other at work these days, so they hadn't seen much of each other. It looked like their reunion might be a stormy one. Maomao thought anxiously as she set herself to organizing the medicine cabinet. "I hope she doesn't say anything suspicious." Yao said, and then asked, "And you don't feel the need to send me out for anything?" "There it is." Yao was resolute, seemingly intent on looking every bit as fearsome as Dr. Liu. The senior physician responded, "No, I don't," and then looked through the daily report as if that was the end of the discussion. The report stated there was not much to report yesterday. Funny, you seem to have errands to run all the time these days, Maomao Yao said. Great, now Maomao was involved. Yes, it seems I do, she replied. There was no point arguing it. And where did your errands take you yesterday? To do what? Maomao said she was retrieving some bear gall. At that moment she was putting away the gall she had obtained the day before. The hunter had given them some already processed. It was a lovely medicine and looked sort of like a misshapen dried persimmon. She thought she caught a hint of a glare from Dr. Liu, but he did not say anything to stop her. He knew she wasn't saying anything incriminating. Gall is such an important medicinal component. I asked to be shown how it was prepared. I also helped with dissecting a cow to see if there were any stones in its gallbladder, which I'm sorry to say there weren't. Stones in a cow's gallbladder, you mean bezoars? I have heard those are found in barely one animal out of 1,000. Why would you go looking for something you know is almost certainly not there? Yao asked. That is a fair question. The chances of finding a bezoar are much higher if the animal displays symptoms of gallstones. The stones become much more expensive once they are sold publicly. Therefore, if you see an animal showing the signs, it is perfectly logical to examine it right away. Maomao walked a fine line, trying to prevent Dr. Liu from becoming upset with her, while also not saying anything completely untrue. She felt a little guilty toward Yao, but she needed to end this conversation. She knew it wasn't entirely fair of her. She was hiding behind Jinshi. Yao might tease her for using dirty tactics, but Maomao wasn't in the mood to talk right now. She had other, more pressing things to do. Yao looked at her and grimaced. Dr. Liu looked back at the daily report. He seemed satisfied with Maomao's answer. I understand, Yao. Believe me, I do. Maomao knew what Yao really wanted to say. Why can't I come too? That is what you want to know. Dr. Liu finally supplied the answer. If you want some errands to run, start by going to the cafeteria. The cafeteria, sir? Why, let me guess, you have never killed and plucked so much as a chicken in your life. You think Maomao was simply watching them chop up the bear? That is what is happening here, and she is accustomed to it by now. It was a rare compliment from Dr. Liu, but somehow it did not bring Maomao pleasure. What about Inen then? She is probably even better at butchering chickens than Maomao is. Perhaps she is, but why bring someone who isn't interested in the errand to begin with? Did you think Inen would go ahead and leave you alone? I'm not going to force anyone who lacks ambition to come along. Do you think it is unfair that only Maomao gets to go on these errands? Do you want things to be different? Then start by making sure you are not dead weight to the people around you. Ah, there was the usual Dr. Liu, relentless and unsparing. Yao clutched her skirt. The physician's words obviously pained her, but she did not say anything. She knew it was true. She had never even held a cleaver in the kitchen. The spring rolls Maomao had eaten for breakfast this morning were entirely Nen's work. We have something else to worry about. There was an audible sound of teeth grinding from behind Yao. It was Nen reaching for a bottle of disinfectant alcohol. It was scary, very scary. Yao, however, reached out and stopped her. She said Nen. She often seemed to do as her lady-in-waiting wished, but at this moment she showed she knew how to handle an overprotective attendant. She turned back to Dr. Liu and said, I understand what you're saying, sir. I will learn how to handle a cleaver right away. Oh, you will you? Well, start by beheading a live chicken. Beheading. It was true that if she could not manage that, she would not be able to follow the path Maomao was on. One of the apprentice physicians had begun to cry, with ugly, snotty tears, when he killed the pig for his dissection. If a farm animal could affect him so strongly, he would never be able to work on human beings. After all, a physician might very well find himself having to amputate an arm or a leg without even anesthetic for the patient. This happened all the time on the battlefield. In war, you did not need your father's hidden anatomy books. You would see enough human organs for a lifetime. The ability to ban a book on dissection was, in its own way, a luxury afforded by a time of peace. Dr. Liu said with a smirk, I wonder if you've got it in you to hack at someone's organs while they're still alive. Yao insisted, I do, I can. That's what I came here for. She wasn't simply being contrary with the senior physician. She genuinely seemed to want to acquire the skills of medicine. If Yao was only here in the medical office to escape her uncle's control, this would be an excellent time for her to give up and go home. Yao was still young, beautiful and smart despite the physical injury she had suffered while tasting food for poison. There must have been many suitors who would be eager to have her. Stop that. I am thinking exactly like her uncle. Yao and Nen both despised Yao's uncle, but he was still thinking of Yao's happiness on some level. Li was generally not a comfortable place for a single woman to live. Many habits, customs and circumstances made it difficult. However, it was Maomao's place to tell that to Yao. If Yao had decided this is what she wanted, then Maomao would stay quiet. That is when she saw Nen standing behind Yao, looking at the mocking Dr. Liu. Maomao knew that Nen would, like her, refrain from comment on whatever Yao decided to do. At that moment, however, there was uncharacteristic indecision in her eyes. Maomao wondered how this was going to play out. However it still did not involve Maomao. She wrote down her newly obtained ingredients as she put them in the cabinet. Yao wasted no time. That night she was standing in the kitchen. Nen watched her somewhat clumsy handling of the cleaver with trepidation. Maomao, who was home early for once, watched them both and waited patiently for dinner to be ready. So I take this and whack. Mistress Yao brought down the knife as if she were chopping wood. It looked like she could have cut through bone, not just meat. Even if Maomao wanted to help, it did not look safe to get too close. It is dangerous working like that. You should start with something smaller. No, I need meat, I need to cut flesh. Nen was distinctly panicked. She was normally so cool-headed that Maomao would have expected her to be a better teacher for Yao, but they were not going to get anywhere this way. Maomao decided to pretend she hadn't seen anything and just leave the room. Unfortunately for her, her eyes met Nen's. Nen gave her a very pointed look, then pointed at the table. Food was there ready to eat. It was chili shrimp, no less. Maomao swallowed heavily. Had Nen prepared something in advance? Steam rose from the fresh dish. It contained many large shrimp and a whole mix of vegetables. Knowing Nen's cooking, Maomao was sure she had used soy paste for a bit of spice. She probably also used some fruit juice to balance the flavor. It would be heavenly over rice. She could almost feel the juicy shrimp in her mouth. It was all too clear that Nen was sending a message. If you want dinner, then help us, she thought. Maomao scowled but went to wash her hands. She could not beat puffy shrimp. She began by selecting a cleaver, a size smaller than the one Yao was holding. Then she put a single carrot on a cutting board. Start by chopping this, Yao, she said. A carrot, but I am trying to learn to cut meat here. I think I can hear Dr. Liu now. You can cut flesh but not even a piece of ginseng? Maomao asked, replacing the carrot with something more traditionally medicinal. Fine, Yao said after a moment. Good, now take this cleaver. There are different kinds of cleavers and you have to cut with them in different ways. The knife you are holding now is for smashing through bone. It is not meant for something as delicate as soft flesh. If you were practicing amputating a patient's arm, it would be perfect. Yao did not have anything to say to that. She bit her lip and switched knives. Nen looked relieved. Yao was dedicated to her studies. She knew certain things that medicine had in common with the culinary arts, but that didn't include the types of cleavers. When it came to kitchen matters, she was more knowledgeable about eating than cooking. Okay, now let's work on how to hold the knife. Do it like this, and when you cut the carrot it is like this. Maomao moved Yao's hand inch by inch. Once you have it fixed in place so the carrot does not move, you can cut nice and slow. You do not have to hack at it. Nen takes good care of the equipment, so this knife has an excellent cutting edge. You do not need a lot of force. Remember that when you cut through festering skin or flesh, you are severing living blood vessels. Thunk went the knife as Yao made an unsteady cut. All right. Now slice it into about 5 pieces. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Yao was a perfectly capable young woman. She just needed someone to show her what to do. It was worth remembering that as grown up as she looked, she was still only 16. There, she said as she finished chopping the carrot. Okay, this next. Maomao set out a daikon. No more vegetables, said Yao. All you have done so far is slice a carrot, Maomao said. Let's work on peeling a daikon neatly before we move on to meat. If anything, Peeling the skin off a daikon was the harder task, but Maomao wanted Yao to do her learning on produce. She didn't want her charging into Dr. Liu's office just because she'd managed to chop a little meat. To be fair, she would need to strangle a chicken first. Yao looked unhappy, but she resigned herself to working on the radish. "Don't worry," she said. "I wouldn't make you peel the whole thing at once the very first time. Cut it into smaller pieces that will be easier to peel." "Sure," she replied. "That is exactly what I was going to do," Yao pouted. While she worked on peeling, Maomao contemplated what to do with the carrot. "Maomao," said Nen, pointing first at the pork Yao had been attempting to chop, then at some dried shiitake mushrooms. The mushrooms were a luxury ingredient. Maomao decided not to ask how she had gotten them. She also saw some spices nearby. Is she hearing that she should make sweet and sour pork? In fact, sweet potato starch was right there as well. It might be perfect for covering the pork, and then it could be fried. Maomao couldn't help longing for the shrimp, which was sitting there getting cold. However, Nen was fixated on watching Yao to make sure she didn't hurt herself. Maomao was left with no choice but to go ahead and make the pork. "Maomao," said Yao this time. "Just so you know, I am not giving up on the physician's path. Women cannot be physicians," Maomao replied, unwilling to lie to Yao. At this point, the most Maomao and her compatriots might be permitted was to obtain equivalent knowledge. They would be given no title and gain nothing from it, other than to satisfy their own intellectual curiosity. Perhaps they could also know that they could respond should some emergency ever arise. But they are already teaching you the things you need to become a doctor, right? That brought Maomao up short. She did not answer. If she was determined not to lie to Yao, then silence was the only response. "I have been thinking hard about it," Yao said. "I mean, since we found the book in Master Lacan's house." That was not a name Maomao liked to hear, but giving Yao a foul look would not help anything, so she just listened quietly. "It is true, I find it hard to accept that way of thinking, but I can understand that it is probably necessary for those who practice medicine." Master Liuhmen made that perfectly clear. "I always assumed we would learn these things eventually. Now I see there is something else you need in order to put them into practice. Intelligent girls were all well and good, but sometimes ignorance was bliss." If Yao hadn't known, or if she could have pretended not to know, then a simpler, easier path might have been open to her. Maomao felt the wish for Yao to be happy, and if even she felt it, how much more keenly must Nen. If Yao was going to learn the same things as a physician, however, then ignorant, blissful happiness would only get further away. "Yao," Maomao said slowly, "being a doctor will mean taking a knife to people sometimes. If a pregnant mother cannot deliver her child, you may have to cut her open to get to it. You may have to do this knowing that at best, only the baby will survive. You might have to amputate an arm or a leg from a patient begging you not to. There might not even be anesthetics available to numb the pain. You might have to put spilling intestines back into an abdominal cavity and sew up the skin right over them. I know all of that. This is a blood-soaked profession. It may mean there will be no one willing to spend their life with you. People might dislike you because they think blood is unclean. You really have to desire this life, or you would be better off avoiding it. I wouldn't be interested in any man who would be scared by a little blood. Would I, Nen? Why, young mistress, Nen said. Nen usually wanted to keep any man away from Yao, but now he looked unsure. Normally, someone like Yao would be following a more traditional path. Even Maomao could see Yao's disappointment, but she didn't think Yao should stop. She could only hope that a little light would shine upon the path Yao chose. "Oops, it broke," Yao said. "Peeling a daikon is a lot harder than it looks." She scowled, showing them a thick strip of radish peel. "You're right, it's not easy," Maomao said. "Nen can make them look like peony blossoms. Yes, well, she is special." That was the honest truth. As she talked, Maomao dunked the battered pork in the oil and fried it well. Yao continued to give the tattered radish peel a dirty look. It looked like it would be a while before they got to taste that shrimp. Chapter 11, The Dissection. The weather had begun to get warmer. The butterbur had blown its edible buds when Maomao and the apprentice physicians were brought to a dark, dank spot. "Finally time for the real deal, huh?" Tianyu said flippantly. He was the only one who could act without being intimidated. The other apprentices all looked pale. Sometimes they would glance at Maomao and seem to ask, "What are you doing here?" but they did not actually say anything. Maomao had weathered plenty of these looks while dissecting animals together. She wasn't about to let it bother her now. Well, it wasn't quite true that no one said anything. Someone's getting very special treatment, remarked Tianyu. As frivolous as he might seem, he had an iron nerve. He had been the calmest when they dissected livestock. He might not learn as readily in the classroom as the other students, but his composure made him a more gifted practitioner. He was very good indeed, if you want to call it that, Maomao replied. Ooh. I'm jealous. Maomao was starting to think Tianyu couldn't stay calm unless he was talking to someone. Most of the other apprentices were too nervous during the practical work to talk to anyone, let alone Maomao, but Tianyu seemed to prattle at her relentlessly. If my treatment's really so special, maybe I could get one of those white coats. Ooh, don't think that's possible, Nyang Nyang. It's Maomao. Was he doing this on purpose?